So let's dwell on that for a moment, because we've got Hurricane Aaron was first named as a hurricane, or as a tropical storm, I think.
Oh, yeah, it got renamed, didn't it? It's the largest hurricane of 2001, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. There's various measures that you can go by. There's obviously the category, which it became a Category 3 storm, so it was fairly big. There's also the physical, width of it. But the peculiar things are, if you look at this data, started as a tropical storm, 1st of September. It was the most studied hurricane. Dr. Judy Wood's got a whole page about this on her website. You can go and look at all the references. They had about 7 or 8 teams of scientists studying this hurricane, with aircraft and radar measurements and so forth. And the hurricane actually hit Bermuda on the 7th of September, and it was reported on CNN as doing a bit of damage there. It was quite a powerful storm. I don't think anybody was killed or anything like that, but it was a fairly powerful storm. And after leaving Bermuda, you can see, if you look at that image, that track that I've put the link for, it went in a straight line. And what do you know? It was going... CNN said it wasn't going to be a problem. It was because it was going out to sea. Yep, it was going out to sea from Bermuda, but it was going out to the direction of New York City. And guess where it was? Well, at 8 o'clock in the morning on 9/11, that's September the 11th, 2001, folks, the hurricane was closest to New York City at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, you couldn't see the hurricane from New York City. You could see, if you look at that original image we posted, you could see the outer bands of the northwest section of the hurricane touching Cape Cod. So you would have probably been able to see a bit into the storm system from there. But you couldn't really see it from New York City. All 3 New York airports reported what's called dry thunder. So there wasn't any sort of, rain and a lot of visible lightning, but they reported the sound of thunder. So the influence of the storm reached as far as New York City, the electrostatic field. Oh, did I say electrostatic field? Yes, I did say electrostatic field, because that's where you start to begin to explore another part of what really happened. And this is what happened, folks. This is a hurricane that happened. You probably haven't heard about it unless you've listened to some of the talks that Dr. Wood has given or some of the talks that I've given. You will not have heard about this hurricane because 2 of the news networks in the morning reported it and 2 of them didn't. And I've got a video showing that footage on my YouTube channel. And again, anybody wants links, write to me and I'll send you them. So we don't take it forever to post everything and do it in the course of this chat. So,
it's just unbelievable. There's like, if the hurricane was that close, I mean, like 50 miles away, it would be all over the news. And it's absent. It's the absent speech. It just speaks loud. It's volumes. It's deafening, the absence of it.
I mean, again, just compare it to Hurricane Sandy, which I think was it was 2012, wasn't it? In fact, yeah, it was. I think it was like, let's see, I think it was October 2012, Hurricane Sandy. That was a Category 1 storm, and it blew into New York a little bit, and it was all over the news. I mean, we even heard about it here, when it's like 3,000 miles away. It's all over the news, and that was a Category 1 storm that just got to New York. This one was going for 4 days in a straight line towards it. They didn't evacuate, no evacuation orders, no nothing. There's nothing. So why was there no real significant coverage of it? I'm not saying there was no coverage of it. There was some, right? You can go and find some of it, and I've got a video where they do mention it. But then the guy just says, oh, don't worry about that, it's going away. He literally says that.
They downclassed it to a tropical storm.
Well, I don't know, maybe they did later, but you can see from that track that what it did do is it made a very sharp right-hand turn and went off out towards Newfoundland. Only happened to be on the 12th of September. So, in other words, folks, the movement, to just state that as clearly as I can, the movement of this storm system was coincident with the events of 9/11. So, to use that language again, either this movement of this storm was a coincidence or it wasn't a coincidence. So you have to decide for yourselves, when you've checked all of this for yourselves, what you think, whether it was a coincidence or whether it was not a coincidence. I suspect.
Well, so this is all missed by everybody else in Truth Movement. There's no 9/11 Truths talking about this.
Nope.
And there's another. I've just posted another picture into chat window now that talks about something else that's never ever mentioned, and that's the magnetic field.
Oh yes.
I'll let you take that.
Right. Yes. So that's a good one, of course, because Dr. Wood had started to work out that energy was involved. Right. Energy is involved in this in some way. And this is where she started talking about this energy weapon, and we can get onto that a little bit now, because people will say, "Oh, ray beams from space, that's just ridiculous. You're going to discredit the Truth Movement by talking about that." Well, actually, folks, Dr. Judy Wood has never said ray beams from space. It was a certain Professor Stephen E. Jones who started to use language like that. Mr. Thermite himself, who we haven't really spoken about yet, and perhaps we will in due course. But let's stay with this idea of energy for the time being. And, energy. What forms of energy are there? Well, we've got heat energy. Well, we've looked at the evidence so far, and unburned paper, liquid water in the bottom of the towers where there's supposed to have been molten metal. It's not really heat energy that's involved here. No building breaking into chunks. No real evidence of bombs going off, really. Not the normal types of bombs. Explosive sounds, yes. Bombs, no. So what other energy? Well, we've seen this thing called the magnetic field trace that Matthew's put up. And we've talked about in a hurricane, which has wind energy and stuff like that, but it also has an electrostatic field associated with it. So what we've got is magnetic fields in the form of this graph, which we haven't properly discussed yet, and electrostatic fields. What's that leading us towards, I wonder? Well, let's talk about the magnetic field, shall we? I think you've put in that other good picture there, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have.
And we'll get a zoom in of that, because this is an amplified trace of the Earth's magnetic field, which was measured by 6 different instruments run by the University of Alaska, and they're called magnetometers. They measure the
Hey, hello?
Going up and down a little bit. But then during the events of 9/11, which are over on the right-hand side there, these things go haywire. So something very odd.
It's one measuring station. This is 6 measuring stations.
Correct. This is 6 different instruments. One of them, I think, was a minute slower than the others. If you look at the traces, you can see it's actually a minute out. And I want to get up another image, let's see if I can find that, which is related to this, because it's like a zoomed in portion of that trace that you posted there. Let's see if I can just get that one. I do know the actual thing. Let's just go down. Where have we gone? Maybe
so whoever did 9/11 had to be able to move hurricanes around and affect the Earth's magnetic field at the same time, like in a cave with a satellite phone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, apparently I've heard there's an app for that now.
I want it.
Maybe I shouldn't joke, because obviously this is deadly serious. But this means something very unusual is going on, and it's easy to cover up. It's easy to cover up because people think, for example, that if you talk about bombs or thermite and stuff like that, that explains the evidence. Well, how do thermite, nukes, bombs, super thermite, nanothermite, how does that explain the presence of a hurricane? How does that explain, and I'm still trying to find the graph that I want because it's much more clear.
Well, the dips in the magnetic field is you've got when the first plane hits the building, it dips first. Then the second plane hit, it dips, and then it's haywire all day, and right till 5:20 when the building 7 comes down, and then it just goes back to normal.
Right.
So,
that's it.
So it's as a description of it for anybody who's not looking at this image. It's just like you've got normal waves going across, and then the magnetic field goes nuts when the first plane hits the building. So a plane hitting a building affects the Earth's magnetic field.
Right. So what I want you folks to just narrow us down on, this is like a zoomed in portion. And what Dr. Wood did is she downloaded the raw data from these magnetometers and she put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and she generated these graphs, because then you can rescale it and you can make the traces have a much more You can exaggerate the vertical scale, that's what I'm trying to say, so you can see the data more clearly. And if you look at that particular one, you'll see at the top we've got the time, which is the text for the time is actually oriented vertically. So you'll see, if you look at the very top left of the picture, you'll see 8:15 a.m.
8:15 it starts, yeah.
Yeah, 8:15 that trace starts, and it goes across to the right-hand side. That's 1 hour of trace. And this is from 9:11:01. In fact, it says it in red text, and I'm not reading it. It says 9:11:01, 8:15 a.m. to 9:11:01, 9:15 a.m. These are the values for the magnetic field. You can see that this deflection of the Earth's magnetic field, this divergence, started around about 8:15. And it carried on and reached a minimum point at 8:46. And then it kind of sort of recovered and went back the other way. And then it kind of reached a maximum at where that brown line is, around about 9:03, 9:04. It started just to go down again. So anyone know what happened at 8:46 on 9/11? It was when this alleged first plane struck. The alleged first plane struck. So what does this mean, folks? Do you think that a plane crash, do you think a computer animated plane can affect and make a hole in the towers, and it can affect the Earth's magnetic field as measured 3,500 miles away, which is where these instruments were? I suggest to you that, I put it to you that we're looking at something off the charts of your current experience and knowledge if you've not been studying some of this separately. We're talking about energy effects. All of the evidence points to energy effects, and none of it points to traditional explosives and nukes and bombs and thermite and any variation of that. And let's just say, for the sake of it, let's be generous. Let's say somebody planted a couple of bombs, so that they could set up the truth movement afterwards, which is what they've done. Then that doesn't really matter, because we all know about bombs. Yeah, so what? Somebody planted a bomb. People plant bombs every day. They do it in Afghanistan. There's roadside bombs. We know all about all of that stuff. You can talk about that if you want. If you want to just discuss that, that's fine. But I'm more interested, for example, in who's actually controlling the weather. Who's got this technology that can do this with energy? Who owns that? Who sanctioned this? Right? And we're not going to find that out unless you start talking about the evidence first of all. Right? So that's where I am on 9/11. If it sounds like I'm being belligerent, then hopefully, I've got good reason for being belligerent, because other people just want to talk about this inconsequential stuff. But this is the real evidence, and it's what you need to develop a real understanding of 9/11.